Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
And welcome back, folks, to Through a Scottish Prism. Lovely to have you back. Been a week since we had a wee chat. I hope you and yours are all well. This, of course, was meant to be coming to you from George Square, and we were assuring you last week that it would, and we would be doing a wee live show, a normal show there, followed by a live show. And sadly, as you know, and we're going to discuss it with my guests, all that went on and what the plans are. But there is good news, of course. We will be doing a live show, and we'll talk about that once I get my guest. Now, the first one in, of course, is our friend from Clackmannshire, Eva Comrie.
Hi, Roddy. It's nice to speak to you again, especially so soon. And yes, indeed, we're in Clackmannshire tonight. Nice to have a weekend at home. And all is good here. But I'm sure we'll go on to the embarrassment that somebody who has a connection with Clackmannshire caused earlier in the week, because we've got so much to talk about tonight.
Oh, you bet your sweet dollar we have. And of course, we've also got the old Coatbridge Cavalier himself, all the way from Cote de Brig, Phil Boswell.
All right, troops.
How are you, my friend?
Magic.
Excellent. It's good to have you. And of course, last but not in any way least is our Yvonne Ridley. Yvonne, welcome back. Did you enjoy your wedding? Was it a good wedding?
Yes, it's over now, and so, let's get down to business.
Well, that's what I'm worried about. What was your son-in-law's name?
Tom, if you're watching this lady face down
Yeah.
the Taliban.
Yeah, behave,
Don't
Tom.
mess with her daughter, mate. You'll be in big tea, I'm telling you. You'll be in big tea. Welcome, friends. So, as I was just saying in the intro there, we're meant to be doing this. We're all meant to be sitting in George Square just now, having a rare old tear. But due to circumstances beyond our control, it didn't happen. Eva, were you surprised when it was cancelled? After all we were told.
Not hugely, because my understanding is that the police had expressed concerns. I think I'm disappointed. And I don't know the detail behind the announcement really, but if the police have got concerns that the police cannot control and adequately police an event which is traditionally a very peaceful and joyful event in George Square, in Glasgow, the biggest city in Scotland, then there's something seriously wrong. If the issue is that it was mooted that perhaps people who are not part of the Yes movement might have attended and caused problems, then that really would worry me if peaceful events like this, which was supposed to be a joyful coming together, have to be sacrificed because the police are losing control of the streets in effect. So if that's the real reason behind the scenes, then I'm really worried about it. If there are issues because the police were not going to be in Glasgow, because Police Scotland have deployed or will deploy hundreds of their force down to London, then I think, again, there's a problem. Because we should be able to have a peaceful event like this without having to think about what's going on elsewhere. So I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed, and I'm concerned to know the whole story and all the detail, and we can see where we go from there. I hope it's not setting a precedent for other similar events to be cancelled as the result of police advice because somehow the police are not in control. That said, there are other aspects of policing in the UK, not just Scotland, this week that clearly cause very much concern.
We'll be discussing them. I'll just say to all you cat burglars and house burglars out there, if all the police are out of Glasgow on Monday, fill your boots, boys. That'd be ridiculous if we've not enough police to look after the public. But Phil, I got a private message before it was cancelled to tell us that a group of the EDL, the BNP, and the Union Bears were bussing people up from England, right-wing extremist Britnats, to disrupt this meeting. And so the concern for me is that
Eva's alluded to, is that Police Scotland are abandoning the streets to, if it's true, are abandoning the streets to people who would disrupt democracy. That cannot be good.
No, it's an absolute disgrace, and the issue here is exactly that. It's freedom of speech. You look at, and I'm engaging with friends who are unionists, friends who and colleagues who are unionists, and they think it's perfectly acceptable for the shutting down of any alternative viewpoint because they disagree with it. And you think, well, hold on a minute here. Freedom of speech is core, and we've been subjected to a serious erosion of that critical right. I mean, there can be little argument. Look at what's happened recently. There can be little argument that lockdown around COVID reduced our rights. Okay, then what about this proxy war with Russia? You can't even say anything that's pro-Russian or anti-Ukrainian without being attacked. Then you get people like Assange, a truth speaker, being jailed and who's being tortured to death, who's not committed a crime. Craig Murray, jailed in pretense charges. Mark Hurst's trial was again and a clear abuse of power by the Crown Office. We should be already in revolution mode. Then these specific incidents you talk about, where the unionist aggressor is supported and the questioning Republican is chastised, assaulted or taken into custody. And I'm talking about the Muir Award Chippy. It was shut down by the police instead of being protected from the unionist thugs who threatened her. Okay, the woman, in my opinion, spoke. It was in very bad taste. But what, shut her business down because you disagree with her? No. Blank signs, that woman who was followed home. The F the Monarchy sign, again in bad taste, but you get arrested for that. And what about your good man Rory, who shouts, "You sick old man," at Prince Andrew, the nonce that he is? And Rory, an articulate, educated young man, visually assaulted by thugs. Then he was arrested by the police instead of being protected from the thugs. And you listening when he asked, why you did it, he stated something like, "I don't think," I'm paraphrasing, "I don't think privileged men should be able to commit sex crimes and get away with it."
That's exactly what he said.
Rory, more power to you, brother. And we should be arresting the thugs. And then, of course, our peaceful Yestival on the 18th was cancelled. Not the threatening unionist marches that were arranged around it, the police that say they couldn't protect us from it. So no, and this is, even though the funeral, they're saying, "Oh no, we're busy with the funeral as well." Really? It's the next day and it's 550 miles away, guys. You're taking it. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. We've got a decision by Glasgow Council, one of the very few, one or two, I think, only in SNP hands, who gave, no, you're not allowed to do it then. What you're going to do is you're doing it on the 1st or the 8th, all under one banner march, or SNP conference. Really? Is that a coincidence? That is not a coincidence. That's Hobson's choice. We are now left with the 8th, and now we have an excuse, and I'm going to say it, I don't care. We have now an excuse for SNP members not to attend. Now, I know from information I've received that we're told they weren't supposed to go. Now, let's see if anyone has the gumption to stand up and defy this tyrannical despotism that has now taken over SNP. But no, it's a very serious erosion of our prime right, because the thing about freedom of speech is the right with which we protect all other rights, and we must not allow it to be taken away from us.
I agree. Here's the other thing Yvonne gets me. They're saying that, well, we didn't have enough. There's a policing issue with numbers at the moment. Is that right? So there was a crowd of 50,000 at Ibrox on the Wednesday night. They didn't seem to have problems getting police for that. Princess Anne, I don't know if you saw, she was in Glasgow and George Square. The crowds were huge. They didn't have problems getting police for that. They weren't short of numbers. And as Phil alludes to, the funeral's 24 hours later. This was to be over by 5 o'clock in the evening. Surely to goodness they could have found enough found police. I mean, wasn't one of the boasts of the Scottish Government when it came in at first was 1,000 extra policemen in Scotland on the beat? Surely they could have found policemen to, and as Eve alluded to, in all the years now, going back to say, let's say 2011, there's not been an arrest, a case of drunkenness, a fixed penalty notice, any trouble whatsoever at a yes event, it's nothing short of disgusting.
Well, I was there last year and it was a joyous occasion. It was fun, a really nice day, a family day, and very few police were around. I don't think anybody was arrested, and I've seen more aggro at a pensioners away day. It was totally peaceful, and there's no reason why it shouldn't have been peaceful this week as well. But of course, I think the big fear is nothing to do with the royal funeral and all the arrangements that have been going on. I think it's more to do with Project Fear and those who do not want to see independence-minded people coming together, especially on this particular event, because it held so much promise to be, pack out George Square. But I still think it will happen at when the event eventually is held, which, I think we've got a date for that now. But I also have a feeling that some of it had to do with policing, not in Scotland, but over the border in England. The police forces there are under-resourced, undermanned, and I think that they've just said, everybody down south, everybody in Westminster for the next week or so. And of course, in an independent Scotland, this would never have happened. It just shows that even Police Scotland might have its own name, its own force, but it's not independent. When they click their fingers in Westminster, they go running. And of course, they've organised this huge funeral. I have, nothing against. I was going to say the royal family. I had nothing against the Queen as such. I just don't like the idea of a monarchy. But let a funeral go ahead. But they're whipping up this fever, this mourning, and they're grooming the public to be almost hypnotized into a grief-ridden state for this this funeral, and it's wrong. We should have been allowed to have held our Yestival. And I'm saying our because it belonged to the people of Scotland. Yeah. But there have been some barking mad decisions made over this funeral. So a friend of mine has been told that she couldn't go ahead with her funeral, and her funeral was cancelled. It was as though she was being told, actually, your mother doesn't matter as much as the nation's mother, and various.
Well, that's exactly what she was being told. That's exactly.
Yes. And I'm not crying here. I've got an eyelash stuck, and and various people were have had to cancel, long planned events.
The two worst I saw
to Centre Parks were told you have to go home for a day. Really. Bonkers decisions that have been made.
Yeah, the closed food banks, it's what she would have wanted, closing food banks, because you won't be hungry on the day she gets. It's ridiculous. But just the last part on this, Eva, if the information I was given early before it was cancelled is true, and they were bussing up thugs like they did on the 19th of September 2014, surely to God the police have powers to stop the buses on the motorways, turn them around and send them back from whence they come.
Of course they have, and they can, the police in England can do that, or the police in Scotland can do it when they come over the non-existent border. But it's, again, very suggestive of political interference and police not doing the job that they're there to do on the one hand, and on the other, misinterpreting the law either deliberately or by misadventure. I mean, I think you saw a post I did during the week, which was a direct quotation from a police commander who said that it had become clear to him in the course of the last few days that many police officers didn't know the law. And that was the explanation as to why some people were stopped who were holding blank pieces of paper, and why others who were exercising their right of peaceful protest were either arrested or threatened with arrest. You know, like the guy up in Aberdeen who was carrying eggs. You know, it's utterly pathetic. If police on the ground don't know the law, then there's a training issue. I think that what's more likely, as some commentators have said, is the police on the ground do know the law, but the commanders like to choose a different interpretation after the event when they know that they've done things that it was beyond their authority to do. So yes, they could stop buses on the motorway if they thought they were coming north to cause bother. Of course they could, but it's just too much hassle. It's much easier to have what they think is a compliant yes movement and to frighten people and to be authoritarian and to suggest to folk that they stay at home and they shouldn't come out onto the streets. I mean, one thing for me that I found absolutely chilling was the sight of the snipers on the rooftops in Edinburgh during the week. You saw that there were a few on the top of Holyrood in the Scottish Parliament. There were some in the Royal Mile as well. Now, I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't have security. Of course we should. But they were so highly visible. Why were they visible? Because to me, that is very much the stamp of an authoritarian regime. And their presence there was to remind the likes of all of us here who are law-abiding people, don't you dare step out of line and put the fear of death in you. Because you are wondering... Well,
literally.
What if something happened? How would it be? What, you know, in all of our lifetimes, we've seen dreadful things in the streets of the United
Bloody Sunday, for a start.
Exactly, that we wish
Murphy.
Absolutely. And we all know the way the British state operates. They make the, in inverted commas, tactical error in the first place, and then they spend 40 years denying it, and then they eventually admit it. I don't want to see any more of that, and I don't want people to be afraid that that's the kind of state that we're living in. But I'm very much afraid that we're heading in that direction. You know, we're being dictated to.
Absolutely. I mean, going on to your guy in Duffy Park, apparently he'd been in Sainsbury's and he had a Sainsbury's bag and he'd all, you know, I don't know what was in there, bread, cheese, milk, and his eggs were at the top. And they asked him, why are the eggs at the top of your carrier bag? Now, everyone knows who puts eggs at the bottom of the bag. Nobody. I mean, God, boys, you know, use a bit of logic. It's just, I mean, absolutely ridiculous. And quite worrying if that's the mentality of the police force, Phil.
Yeah, and the training, and he was bang on the money. You go to Tully Allen or the Scottish Police Training College and you're taught all the processes, procedures, and it's mostly processes, procedures, protocols. You don't need to know the law per se. You need to know the rules, the regulations, and the procedure on how you process any potential breach or and your powers of arrest. So, and I've heard also where the commander has given instructions. Oh no, we were told to follow you, to just make sure you weren't going to do anything. It's like
I was only following orders. Is that I think that's been used before.
Yeah, we've heard that one before, and Eva could speak more clearly about that one. But no, it's not acceptable, and it's really disconcerting that we are now in a situation where people who you would consider friends, I consider friends, and are readable and intelligent people, are acquiescing to this right-wing fascism. What else? What else can you describe this as? Oh, but they should show some respect. That's what we fought wars for. This is why I don't want to wear a red poppy. I would choose a white poppy, because the people that fought for my right to decide what I want to do and how I choose to live, that's what we're supposed to stand for. the right freedom of choice. I mean, there's that brilliant. What's it? There's so many examples of why we should protect freedom of choice and why we really must be very, very wary of even the slightest erosion of that critical core function of our civilization, because it is the right by which we protect all other rights. You lose that right, you're finished, and this is why we've got to fight for Assange. We've got to defend the likes of Craig Murray. We've got to defend Hearst. We've got to defend all these people that stand up, the truth speakers. It's too important. It's core to who we believe we are. And if you truly believe it, then you've got to put something on the line. And it's time to do it, because the revolution is nigh. This is getting out of hand.
Yeah, on an upbeat note, Yvonne, we promised our viewers that we would do some kind of live show in the square after we'd done our normal show. And thanks to it, a big shout out for Robert Slavin. Now, this is going out to you from Coatbridge to Eagle Inn. This is going out to you. It's now probably about 12:20. 1 o'clock, this will be over. I'm going to cut it short today, so you can get yourself over to Coatbridge. Because in the Eagle Inn, the lovely Eva, the lovely Yvonne, the Coatbridge Cavalier, and Sarah Sailors, and my good self will all be there, and we're going to do a question time type programme for you. So get down there, come and ask your questions, and instead of us choosing the subjects, it's your show. You choose the subjects, and we'll see you on Sunday. But while we're on it, Yvonne, are you excited about going there for a wee live show?
I am, yes. This was the famous pub that was used in the Alipur campaign material, wasn't it? So I'm really looking forward to going and to meeting all the stars of that video, who are all drawn from members of the public, punters who go to the bar. And I want to meet the landlord as well and shake his hand.
He's a good guy. I mean, Phil, we were talking about doing this before. We'd lined up. We'd been asked by several Alba Lacus, a couple of yes groups, to take Prisom on tour, and then along came COVID. So we've been planning this for a while. Now we're going to be let loose in Coatbridge, folks.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh yeah, what could possibly? Jesus God, yeah, what could possibly go wrong? But to get back, Eva, to everything that's going on with this funeral now, I put out a tweet yesterday. Everyone knows that I'm a Republican, and I refuse to use this woman's death for political capital while she's still above ground. So I'm just generalising. Don't get me wrong. After a respectable time after the lady is in her grave, I will be opening with 2 barrels, because I've been disgusted at some of the stuff that's been going on here and used against the people. But the new king wasn't long in making appointments, and some of them are not going down too well with the public, either in Scotland or Wales, and particularly I would say in Wales, when he announced, without any discussion whatsoever, and showing his privilege, he made his son the Prince of Wales and his daughter-in-law the Princess of Wales. And the Welsh are quite rightly, or a load of them are quite rightly up in arms. It's terrible, this imposition. But people say Wales is not a colony, Scotland is not a colony, Northern Ireland is not a colony. But this shows, indeed we are, especially Wales, getting their own prince.
Well, Roddy, I confess to not knowing too much Welsh history. I remember, though, watching a couple of films and reading a couple of books when I was probably in my teens, to do with sacrifices that were imposed upon the Welsh, particularly to do with the flooding of their valleys to provide reservoirs for the use of the English. And that still seems to me something really quite dreadful. The other awful thing that we're all very much aware of was the Aberfan disaster. Mm-hmm. And I did a bit of research into that a couple of years ago, because I found it terribly tragic, but also horribly fascinating to see what had happened in the aftermath of Aberfan. And of course, it turned out that people had been warning of the potential for that tragedy for years. And after it happened, there was a very long time elapsed before any proper compensation was paid to the families who had suffered and who had lost. And that wasn't even done properly either. So I think it's always been the case that the Welsh have actually been a bit of an afterthought as far as Westminster was concerned. But what I didn't know until the death of the Queen and King Charles's elevation to become the monarch as opposed to the Prince was that the last Welsh-born Prince of Wales, Owen Glendower, his anniversary would have been today, of all days. And obviously the position, if you're Welsh, you'll know perfectly well, is that the Welsh princes were killed off by the English, and it was avowed that future princes of Wales would all be English, imposed upon the Welsh. And that's in part why there is a Welsh movement against having another Prince of Wales imposed upon them. So it's particularly galling, I would think, that William was elevated to become the new Prince of Wales with no prior consultation with the people of Wales. The Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford, knew about it only after the fact. He probably read about it on the Twitter feed. He certainly wasn't consulted and he wasn't informed officially. That just shows you the total, utter, complete contempt that the now King has for the, in inverted commas, principality that he had, in essence, reigned over and been responsible for since he was, what, was he 21 when he was invested it? Was it Carnarvon?
I remember it.
He doesn't give a toss about the Welsh. What that was about was, I'm not there anymore to be the better fire my son in quickly before anybody's got time to try to stop it happening. He did the same damn thing in relation to the councillors that he's now got, he's appointed for, one of whom is his brother Andrew. What he ought to have been doing was asking his advisors to expedite through the House of Parliament, House of Commons, House of Lords, a bill to remove every title that Prince Andrew currently holds. That would have been the right thing to do. There's nobody on the planet that believes the Queen paid £12 million of our money to buy off somebody who was entirely innocent. Whatever it was that he did, we'll probably never know for sure until he's dead and gone himself. But he certainly doesn't merit holding on to a title, including the Earl of Inverness, which I think he's had all the way.
Yeah, well, I've heard that all the ladies in Inverness have heard that he's given 12 million quid to women that he's never met, and they're all getting excited because they've never met him either, so they might get 12 million quid. But on that, the thing that really gets, I find strange, Yvonne, and you as a good women's rights lady, is he appointed all these other people. He didn't appoint his sister, who is the most senior, and by the change of the Act of Secession, she would have been the second in line, not Andrew. But she's not. Now, we don't know if she'd have said, I don't want the job, I'm not interested. But it seems she's been bypassed, or chose to be bypassed.
Well, many years ago, I was a royal correspondent for the Sunday Express. And I remember doing a story about about Charles being the Prince of Wales. And he had by his bedside a load of little miniature photographs of the royal family. And everybody was there apart from Princess Anne. So I think that there's been some frisk between them in the past. And so maybe he's getting his own back now, because like any family, they've got lots of skeletons in the closet. In fact, actually, the Windsors are probably Britain's most dysfunctional family when you consider.
You've not met my family. You've not met my family yet.
Well, anyway, I think that Charles has no great love for his sister, and I think it's very much reciprocated. But at the end of the day, why are we being forced to even talk about these people? They're of no great importance to our lives. They have no influence over Scottish independence. And in fact, they're a very good reason added on to the many other good reasons why Scotland should be independent. And I'm quite sure when we get our independence, one of the first things that we'll probably hold another referendum on is the future of the royals. Do we need a royal family? And you know, let them stay over the border. And as for Wales, I feel, I used to be editor of Wales on Sunday newspaper, and I was often told that Wales is the longest occupied country in the British Empire. And that's how a lot of Welsh people regard themselves, still under occupation.
Yeah, quite rightly so. On this, the whole, I don't know what you call it, fandango, whatever's going on, Phil. One of the ones that got me, they were moving all the homeless out of round Buckingham Palace, where anywhere near Windsor, they were getting rid of them. But then they allowed Ma, Pat and Jeannie from Wigan to come with their tent and camp in the very same places that they were throwing the homeless out of. Please explain that one to me. I don't understand it, Phil.
We all know it's one rule for one and a different rule for everyone else. At a time when the cost of living crisis is tearing families, individuals, our society apart, this nonsense is being promoted, and they're just promoting what they want you to believe and what you are supposed to, how you're supposed to think. They're telling you how to think, and woe betide you if you don't. We will prosecute you. We might even shoot you. You know, and I look at this. This is synonymous of looking after number one. They're looking after themselves. You've got Kwasi. I mean, I wanted to talk about something, and it ties a wee bit in with this. It's this cost of living crisis is happening now, and what they're doing, they're cleansing the streets to present an image that this is a successful, wonderful country, and everybody's here to kiss King Willie's loof, as the song used to go, and to kowtow to the royals and the institutions that have put us into this cost of living crisis, of which they are the top supposed to be. And there's a guy I know quite well, Kwasi Kwarteng, and this sums it up as well. We are in a cost of living crisis, and the bankers continue to gain. Okay. This isn't accidental. You know, there's an inevitable impact on the people, and that's what it is. You get more people on the street, and more people relying on a society that no longer cares for them, is no longer able to care for them, because it's draining off all the resources into usury and financial capitalism. And that's a subject of its own, but it's the whole industrial capitalism v financial capitalism. As you know, I'm a capitalist, but I'm a socialist, industrial capitalist. I'm not a financial capitalist into usury, and these people are just creaming and contributing nothing. There's a brilliant guy I spoke about before, Michael Hudson. But what you're getting now is was it just yesterday, Kwasi's not only be cleansing the streets to create the right image, we're going to take away the bankers' cap on their benefits, their bonuses. At a time when people are screaming out for help, and like, this is, I know Kwasi, insofar as you can know a work colleague. He joined the Public Accounts Committee shortly after me, and we worked at the same time. And it's a place, the pack is where they put people in for ministerial roles, right? It's a waiting room for ministers, because it's a highly regarded select committee. Now, I was only commercial contracts manager of this. I was lead rapporteur on it, right? Because I'd done international construction, oil and gas. Kwasi was pretty much there defending Brexit. Every time I critiqued what was happening and the cost and the imbalance, this system that creates these people are on the streets that are getting cleared out the way so it doesn't create an image. Every time I was critiquing that, all he did was stand up and shout, "You can't say that, you'd know what you're talking about. Brexit's the greatest opportunity we've ever had." And I thought, well, at the time, I thought he's just another Tory, but I looked into it. Who is Kwasi Kwarteng? He's a highly intelligent high achiever. Eton scholarship, Cambridge classics in history, Harvard scholarship again, PhD in economic history. And this is the big tie-in for me. If you study economic history, you understand how Keynesian economics, how right going back to Adams, right going into John Stuart Mill, how the financial capitalism has been changed out for industrial capitalism. He knows, because nobody studies economic history anymore. They don't teach it in most of the modern courses. If you understand economic history, you know that things have changed and that now we're feeding the financial centre in the cities to look after themselves instead of industrial capitalism, which creates jobs, and you want a social fabric that makes it more affordable. And why has he done that? Why would he do that? Because he was a banker. He's scrapping the banker's bonus because he was a financial investment banker, literally and in the rhyming slang sense. I know him. He worked for JP Morgan and Chase. He's not working for you, he's working for them. And the full horror is about to unfold on the desperate citizenry. And these people are not giving a damn about us. They're trying to create an illusion that Britain is together and mourning a monarch that most of us don't give a damn about. I mean, we won't speak disrespectfully, but the monarchy is not what we believe in, and we certainly don't believe in putting imagery before reality in people's lives that are being destroyed right now. This is time for revolution, people. It's way, way, way past time.
What Phil's talking about here, at the same time as Kwasi is getting rid of the bankers' cap on their bonuses, and so they can do some more lovely, dangerous capitalism and gamble away. The EU is bringing a 140 billion windfall tax down upon the energy companies, a one-off tax, of which our Prime Minister has said, no, she wouldn't do that. She believes in trickle-down economics. It just shows why they wanted out of Europe. It just shows you the difference on their view of economics and their disregard for those less fortunate in our society. Phil's right. We could be heading for a revolution here.
I would like to think we were heading for a revolution. You know, nothing would give me greater pleasure, quite frankly. Because what we've got is, we all know trickle-down economics doesn't work unless your objective is to pretend that you're trying to reduce the gap between rich and poor. The reality is trickle-down economics increases the gap between rich and poor. The whole world knows that. What we've got, though, now in Scotland, and the reason why I would favour, if not a revolution, then certainly a very early restoration of independence, is down to poverty and inequality, because it's the inequality in the UK, but we see it most especially in Scotland, that is the reason why we have so many people who have ill health. The attainment gap in education is primarily down to poverty. We have homelessness, criminality, addiction, mental health difficulties, poor housing, a host of problems which all arise from poverty and inequality. Mm-hmm. And for as long as we are part of a union where the numbers of millionaires and billionaires are higher than they've been in history, then Scotland's going to continue to suffer. And what we need are brave politicians and brave leaders who actually challenge that autocracy that we've got now, the imperial attitude that there is in London and in Westminster towards the rest of the UK. So Scotland needs people that are brave enough to stand up and be counted. And I hope that Yesterville on the 8th of October, although I want it to be positive, I also want it to be a very, very clear sign, not only to Westminster, but to political leaders in Scotland, that the time is now. We've said this before, unfortunately. The Queen will not be the only old lady that dies this year. There will be old men and old women and youngsters in Scotland who die this winter because they're cold or they're hungry or they're impoverished or they're doing without unnecessarily in a country which is so very, very rich. It's absolutely shameful and almost beggars belief that we're having to have these conversations in 2022.
Yeah, Yvonne, that old phrase that, it's a good day to put out bad news, which governments love to do when you're distracted. And what bigger distraction than the death of a monarch and, a new one come along. But, everyone's been told to be respectful and show this, that, and the next thing. And I go back to, I'm a Republican, so harm yourself as much as you like. But Charles went on a wee tour as if to get to know the people. He went to Edinburgh and he went to Belfast and he went to Cardiff. Could he not have waited at least till his mother was in the ground before he went out? Could he not have led this respect that they're wanting everyone else to follow? Or am I just being overcritical? You're mute. You're muted. You're muted. Yvonne, you're muted.
Sorry, that was because of my noisy dog. You're not being overcritical. The problem is King Charles was acutely aware the moment his mother died, which was the moment he became king. He knows that revolution is in the air, and he has to get out round the United Kingdom. And I laugh every time I use the term United Kingdom, because we're not united at all. And he had to get round and get everybody whipped into shape. There was, it's no coincidence people weren't just told, oh, the Queen's died. There was a period of about 6 hours before it was announced, but it was trickling out because they were started grooming the public, and the public have been groomed into this mass mourning, and the Charles Circus is part of that grooming process. And what they want is to have a subdued, cap-doffing nation that is, you know, pro-royal. And that's what they're working on at the moment. Obviously, it hasn't worked that well on you, Roddy, or I doubt any of the Prisom listeners today. But we are all in danger of being groomed, and that's why Charles went whipping out. And as somebody pointed out, this whole mourning process is taking so long. Charles will probably keel over, and then it'll kick in again for King William, and we'll have another 2-3 months of mourning as well. We have to look at the bigger picture, keep focused on what we're about. October the 8th, I think Eva said, is the resumption of the Festival, and we will be looking at the Festival for the emergence of some revolutionary leaders. Now, I know we've got Tommy Sheridan there, but we need some young leaders coming through who will send a message to those weak, spineless chumps who are sitting in Holyrood at the moment, and they know who they are.
I think your dog's definitely a Republican. The whole thing is quite farcical, but when the Ascension was being read out, Phil, all the leaders were paying attention, except the Sinn Féin. They went for a walk. Michelle O'Neill went for a walk with Mary Lou MacDonald and their trusted advisors. They didn't hang about for the nonsense. Meanwhile, our First Minister was belting out God Save the Queen. Now, some people say, she had to do that. I'm of the opinion, Phil, that she could have stood there in respectful silence. Just stood there. She didn't need to. Can you imagine Sinn Féin singing God Save the Queen? Or God Save the King as it is now? No,
they wouldn't. They just simply wouldn't. Why would Sinn Féin not do it and Nicola do it? Is because Sinn Féin actually do what they say on the tin. They want an independent, they want a united Ireland, and they're willing to accept the troublesome north of Ireland that has not made profit since the Second World War. The north of Ireland has cost money to the British government, and just look at the way they do business. Their modus operandi is to get their small clique of unionists to be hopefully the balance of power of a Conservative government, where they can bring leverage to bear to get an extra billion, as they did last time. They get an extra billion because they used the leverage they had and the votes they had for the unionists. That is not powerful. What is powerful is what Southern Ireland have done to have come from 100 years ago at partition, when the North was twice as rich as the South, and now the Southern Irish, because they're standing on their own 2 feet and not doffing the cap and not out with the begging bowl and not playing that game for their imperial masters. And now the South is twice as rich as the North. Mm-hmm. Twice as rich as the North. So no, what do they do? They know, they think, we want peace in this land. We do not want this Good Friday Agreement to break up. Britain doesn't give a damn about the North because it's costing them money. The only bit that Britain wants to hang on to is Scotland. Wales has been so anglified because of the... You go down to Hay-and-Wye, I've been at the book festival, and you go down to Hay-and-Wye and it's Welsh? I don't think so. It's pretty much English. And large sections of Wales are anglified, and we're facing the same problem here. We've got, I can't remember the last figures I looked at, but it was like 70,000 mostly young Scots moving out, and about 50,000 English people moving in. One of whom's on this show, who's very, very welcome, I hasten to add, because she's voting for independence. But 80% or something in the after the last referendum were not. They voted for retaining the union, and we've got to be careful of that. That's something that we seriously have to address. So in answer to that question, Nicola, why is she singing the national anthem, waving flags, and generally doing nothing but standing in the way of the people's will to have an independent nation? You've sold out, Nicola. You've betrayed us. It's as simple as that. And I'll look at what the Irish are doing, and they're opening their hands, friendly, saying, let's have peace, let's retain the peace, even though all the trouble that North brings with the division and the sectarian nonsense that's quite frankly been provoked by this unionist drivel that's been forced down our neck. That's not civilized. That's not Christian. If you're a Christian, you behave like one. I mean, Matt, we are friends. We don't care what religion anybody is. We don't care what colour, creed, or disposition you have, your sexuality. Who cares? It's people being good to each other and being reasonable and giving and being nice to each other. You don't create hate, you don't mix it up, and you don't play their game, and that's what Nicola's doing. So, Nicola, no, we've said it many times. You're finished. As soon as enough people in Scotland catch on, she's clearly already looking for a bailout. She's already looking for an exit. My fear is what she leaves behind her, who's coming in behind her, and if it's Angus and the man who pretty much single-handedly destroyed the SNP by removing the power of the people, then we're toast.
My last question will be about Angus. I'm coming back to him. But Eva, during his ascension, Charles did a thing that was joyous to us in the independence movement. He swore an oath to the claim of right. And he couldn't become king without that, which gives this... kills the lie of a lot of the unionists. Oh, it's an old document, doesn't count, doesn't matter. But it's linked, as has been said by people at Sarah Sailors, to the Treaty of Union. It was part of the condition that they had to keep the claim of right. Now they can't deny it, but if you notice the BBC, there's 2 different clips, which Techie will show, where he said it and did it all in the name of the claim of right. But they said, shortly after this, by the second time they did this bit, they had removed the bit, the BBC had removed the bit where he mentions the claim of right. They're scared stiff because the claim of right can now be invoked and they cannot deny it. Their king used it, so Scotland can use it because it is a living document, it is a living constitution.
I, Charles III, by the grace of God, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of my other realms and territories, King, Defender of the Faith, do faithfully promise and swear that I shall inviolably maintain and preserve the settlement of the true Protestant religion as established by the laws made in Scotland in prosecution of the claim of right.
Well, it's a living document, but it's also part of Scottish history, Scottish tradition, and it's a very important aspect, as you've said, to the Treaty of Union. But it's what I think Alex Salmond and others called part of the golden thread of democracy and sovereignty that stretches back, at least as far as the Declaration of Arbroath of 1320, if not earlier. The people are sovereign. That's why in Scotland, Charles will be known as King of Scots, and it's why, that Queen Elizabeth was Queen of Scots, not of Scotland, because the people choose to have a sovereign, because the people themselves have sovereignty. And so I think that what you'll find developing over a period of time, if we've got strong enough, brave enough hearts to go for it, is that this, the claim of right, as Sarah Salyers would speak about it, and the older claims of right that go back for hundreds of years, will continue to be spoken about. They have validity, they have a legal thrust, but the important aspect to that is the claim of right's already been affirmed in the House of Commons. Mm-hmm. It's narrated in Hansard as having been affirmed in a debate in the House of Commons a couple of years ago. So that can't be hidden. They might try to erase it, but it's there. What's more important, though, is that claim of right and all that it represents is one aspect of what is really a tripartite plan for the restoration of independence. So if we assert our claim of right, if we have politicians who are prepared to stand up and be counted and do what Nicola Sturgeon promised almost 3 years ago would happen. January 2020, she said, we'll have a constitutional convention. She can hold a constitutional convention. She can start it next week. As soon as the Queen's funeral's been, Nicola can announce that the following Friday and every Friday after that, as I've said before, all elected politicians of an independence mind in Scotland can gather in Edinburgh and figure out a plan to regain independence. So that's part 2. Part 3 is international recognition. These things go together, and when you've got those with the power of the people, then in essence what you've got is almost a misnomer, but you've got the beginnings of a revolution in democracy and in the way that the sovereignty of the people of Scotland is expressed. So if I was Westminster, I'd look out, and if it was Nicola Sturgeon and those around her, get moving, get your act together. Time is not on your or our side.
On the claim of right, Yvonne, they're already, because they cut the bit off at the end, they're already trying to say, well, it's just about protecting the Protestant religion. It's nothing to do with anything else. They're already trying to dismantle what is a very important document, as Eva's laid out, as Sarah Salyers has done marvellously, and I'm sure will again. They're getting nervous. They know that the clock is ticking. Would you agree?
Absolutely. The SSRG are all over this, and quite frankly, I think we're at a stage now where we should just bypass the SNP and forget Westminster and also forget Holyrood unless they actually get on board with us. We don't need to get on board with them. They need to get on board with us. And we should follow the SSRG and follow this claim of right and seize it ourselves. Why the hell do we have to wait for Nicola Sturgeon to put her high heels on and start to lead? Her days are finished. She's shot herself in the foot. I can't see anybody that dynamic coming up through the ranks of the SNP who's qualified enough to lead us. We need some revolutionary leaders at the front and pushing for the claim of right, and forget this namby-pamby nonsense of going to an English court cap in hand asking for permission. Let's just get on with it.
I agree. Phil, we're running out of time, as I say, because I want the people who are watching today to rush down to Coatbridge as soon as we finish talking. But you mentioned Angus Robertson, and I've got to say, yesterday Angus put out a tweet. Now, one of the first things that attracted me about the independence movement was its unilateralism for weapons of mass destruction. But it's also been our movement since its inception, and certainly for the last 60 years, has been one of anti-war. Anytime there's a conflict, we demand an immediate ceasefire and a negotiated settlement. I remember when Alex Salmond referred to the bombing of Belgrade as an unpardonable folly. He was out on his own and he took an awful lot of stick for it. He was proved right. It was an unpardonable folly. But Angus yesterday, with the recent events of a small counter-offensive by Ukraine, Angus was getting all excited and saying we should send more weapons to a war Now, that's not the SNP I was in for nearly 50 years, or over 50 years. Shouting for more weapons, more deaths, more civilians killed. This party has given up on so many things, on women, on women's rights, on independence, and now on our peacekeeping stance, which was with us for 60 odd years. I am horrified. What about you? You're in mute, mate.
Yes, I'm the same, and I know something about this. Angus is part of a small cabal, along with Nicola and a number of others that run this, and the leader of the Glasgow Council, which is why our dates were set to what they are, in my belief. The 8th, Hobson's choice. Angus has betrayed the principles. Angus, mate, if you get this message, you've betrayed everything we believe in, and I'm disappointed. There was the military section of the White Paper. A part of it, a version of it, was drafted in my house in Royal Deeside on June of 2013. There were some senior British officers, friends of mine, a Clausewitzian military strategist, and Angus and the Chief of Staff at the time, Luke Skipper, and they were there to test and verify whether my contacts were bona fide Scottish nationalists or MI5 or whatever they were, right? I was organiser for Aberdeenshire West at the time and working as an oil and contracts manager for Shell, which didn't last very long once my colours were flown. But the truth is, we should have been checking Angus's credentials out, because he's the one that's betrayed our principles. That sickens me. That what you've done, Angus, you not only have you destroyed the party with this move to take away the power of the people from the party, you've become a tool of the establishment, and you're now voicing the corruption and the murder that is practiced. Murder that is practiced by this establishment. You should be ashamed of yourself, Angus, notwithstanding your involvement in the attempted destruction of the good that this party has created and all the principles we stand for. No, I'm cheesed off. And just while Eva was talking about Salvo, I've just joined Salvo. You can do it online at salvo.scot and look at SSRG, sign up to it. Let's get going. Let's get into them.
Yep. We want 100,000 signatures to call our own Convention of the States, etc. That's when 100,000 signatures to join. Yvonne, to stop wars, you don't supply weapons. That's not how you stop wars.
Not at all. But you've got to look at who Angus's friends are. And those of you who may have watched The Lobby a few years ago, which was about the all-powerful influence brought to bear in Westminster by the pro-Israeli lobby, you'll find that Angus was one of their pets. They groomed him. He was groomed by Tel Aviv. The Israeli embassy official who was expelled for his dealings in Westminster had described Angus as one of our men, one of our friends. And of course, Israel is up to its neck in all sorts of shenanigans in Ukraine. And to have Angus rubbing his hands with glee and going all gung-ho about what's happening in Ukraine. It's obscene. It's obscene. I keep saying, the Ukrainians are in a war. They cannot win. And so are the Russians, by the way, because, we know the Ukrainians will go on fighting for as long as they're being encouraged by Israel, by America, by Britain, and by other warring countries who are pushing all these weapons onto them, when in fact it should be jaw, not war.
War. Absolutely. And that's the thing. If we want peace, Eva, you don't give them weapons. President Biden could one phone call and that war's over. Mm-hmm. He's just got to phone Zelensky and say, stop now. And get on the phone he's got a direct line to Putin as well and say, stop your troops where they are, let's talk about this. But the military industrial complex and the Washington Hawks want this to keep going. And the fact that the Scottish National Party is joining in this is just, to me, just quite disgusting.
I wouldn't profess to know all the ins and outs and all the details of the Ukraine-Russia war, but I was very interested in what you were saying there in relation to Angus Robertson and Israel, because on a daily basis we know of the atrocities that are happening in Palestine and Yemen and Syria and Afghanistan and all the other war zones of the world, and yet the only one that's regularly in the headlines for now is that one, Ukraine and Russia. And as far as I know, that is the only war where the Scottish Government, in effect, have made a fairly substantial financial contribution. Yeah. I am not aware of them paying big sums of money to help, for example, the Palestinian boys who are kneecapped on a regular basis, or to assist the families of the journalists who are shot or tortured. So there is something very perverse at the heart of the SNP, and it's certainly not the party that I thought that I was in for decades either. Heartbreaking, actually.
Yeah, it's a tragedy, and it's a show that we'll have to do again later, and because you could do a whole hour on this, this fall from grace of our once great party. Betrayal, yeah. That's maybe what we'll call it. But anyway, ladies, gentlemen, we're going to meet in a few hours. I'm being excited. I'm being all excited. And it should be fun. And I hope you're all in your best behaviour. I'm actually just talking to Phil here, ladies. I'm not talking to you. I know you'll always be well behaved. I'm just pretending I'm being even-handed. I'm directing it all at him. So I hope your cold's better within as well, mate.
I'm feeling good then. Don't worry about it. And then kicks off. Rab Slavin's a top boy. And he's also got his own karate school. So I'm not really worried if then kicks off, Bring it on. Rab will sort it out and his mates.
That's so good, because I'm certainly not a fighter, that's for sure.
Right. The revolution's starting on Sunday then?
Could be.
Come on. Yes.
So come along, folks. Let's see. You've got time. We'll be there till you finish asking us questions. But for those of you who can't make it, and until we see you again, please, you and yours, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.